Do you need a web application security solution that can improve your detection rate and enable easier remediation? Acunetics has a fully automated solution that can detect and report over 4,500 web vulnerabilities. Fast and scalable, it can scan thousands of pages without interruption, including HTML5, JavaScript, and single-page applications. Acunetics provides accuracy with the lowest false positives by combining black box and white box testing. For more information, visit acunetics.com/securityweek. Hard-coded credentials can be trouble, but not as much trouble as a vulnerable DevOps environment. If you want protection without the hassle of security slowing you down, CyberArk, the #1 provider in privileged access security, has the solution for you. With CyberArk Conjur, developers can easily secure secrets across any DevOps toolchain or platform, whether your application runs in the cloud or on premises. Eliminate the headaches of managing secrets and try Conjur open source for free with no strings attached. Visit conjur.org/ASW to get started today.
Welcome back to Application Security Weekly. Just a quick announcement. If you're interested in quality over quantity and having meaningful conversations instead of just a badge scan, join us April 1st to the 3rd at Disney's Contemporary Resort for InfoSec World 2019, where you can connect and network with like-minded individuals in search of actionable information. Use the registration code OS19-SECWEEK for 15% off the main conference or World Pass. With that being said, I'm super excited to have Brian Kelly here with me today. He is the head of Conjur Engineering at CyberArk, where he focuses on creating products that add much needed security and identity management to the landscape of DevOps tools and cloud systems. Brian is a passionate individual about software, building teams, cybersecurity, and DevOps. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Keith. Great to be here.
Awesome. So, Brian, I wanted to start just a little bit with some of the stuff that we were talking about just before we started recording, which is you've got a pretty interesting history in writing software. So, from what I understand, you were at one point in your life in Ireland and then moved to the States during the .com boom. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. So Ireland had this great economic boom in the 90s. They call it the Celtic Tiger. The Celtic Tiger was, spurred on by a lot of multinational investment in Ireland, and all these American companies like Apple and Intel, HP, they all started to build their European centers there. And it kind of snowballed, and we got this amazing uptake of native technology. So I was, lucky to graduate around that time. And also lucky to go work for a company that was focused on really cool things. And one of those was a sort of middleware stack and network, software that was open sourced. And we built enterprise software, which was closed source on top of that, and had a really good community built around the open source side, and then also a really good business on the enterprise side. And that's also the company that, was flying me back and forth to the United States every couple of weeks. And I said, okay, I'll just go live there. And here I am, many years later. And so it's been an interesting ride.
Awesome. Now, I know that obviously Conjur has their open source solution available as well, and you can check out more details on the architecture of that on conjur.org. And specifically, if you want to check out more, you can go to conjur.org/ASW. But tell me a little bit more about what the journey was like for you in terms of being at Conjur and then through the acquisition with CyberArk. What was it like to tell the new company overlords, as it were, that you wanted to open source this? It must have been a very interesting conversation.
What was really funny about it was they were the ones, CyberArk were the company that actually wanted to do the open sourcing. And it just so happened that, Conjur, the startup, we were building some of our components in the open already. And we also had planned our next generation version of Conjur, which is now released. But back then, the plan was to bring that to the open. And it was just great to have, an acquisition go that way, where the acquirer says, hey, we're thinking to go in this direction, DevOps focused, which, usually requires open source, not all the time, but usually. And then us to say, wow, how about that? We are going that direction too. And that's one of the reasons why the acquisition's been so successful. And most importantly is the reasons behind and the motivations behind CyberArk wanting to go open source. It's not some, you'll hear of enterprises sometimes that do an insincere play where it's like really what I would call source available. Source available meaning you can go to GitHub and you can pull down some source. That's nice. But that's not open source. Open source is the construction of a community, the building of a culture where people outside the company who are not employees can collaborate, contribute, and help influence the direction of that product. And it's been great to do that because Conjur, as a startup, had certain amounts of resources to do it. With CyberArk, and the many resources CyberArk has because of its size and its legacy, it's way more momentum than we could ask for, and it's really been a wonderful. I think a little over a year now since we made Conjur an open source DevOps security appliance, so it's been great.
That's awesome. And let me ask as well, was there any pushback at all that you encountered in the whole idea of open sourcing it that you would give as perhaps guidance to others on ways of getting through that? Because I can imagine that at some point somewhere, whether it was legal or finance or sales, somebody probably was the devil's advocate, as it were, against that. Did you face any challenges at all that maybe you have recommendations for others that are thinking about going the open source route as well as part of their development of a community that might be useful?
Yeah, you can't take a company that was historically closed source for 17, 18 years and just go open source by saying so or with a flip of a switch. It takes there's machinations, there's things that need to happen. So just like we tell people to move security left in their DevOps flow or whatever to address things earlier and optimize sooner. If an enterprise is going open source, I think the lessons that I've seen, not just here but also in other companies that I've seen take open source initiatives, is get out ahead of the big things first. Kind of like your big constraints. But you don't know what your big constraints are until you get to them. The patterns I've seen in companies that have done this, and also with CyberArk, are legal, as you mentioned, setting up a legal infrastructure that allows for outside contributions to be incorporated into the product. Because historically, you have employees who sign agreements saying things like IP ownership, confidentiality. But you can't exactly build a great open source community if you're going to ask everybody to sign huge documents or have them to get attorneys involved to review them. But you also can't swing the needle the other direction and have really from I think can't have people randomly from other countries just sticking their code in and having it accepted. You don't want to get involved with IP confusion, things like that. So one of the first things we did was get the lawyers in the room and say, okay, what does it mean to have someone have their code accepted into our code base? What would we need to agree upon? And then a code of conduct, extremely important. You're going to be interacting with the community, and we've seen many companies, frankly, suck at this. And either not having a code of conduct or not adhering to it and having some really nasty behaviors uncovered. So getting those things done early are frankly easy if you do them early, but they're hugely impactful, negatively impactful, if you don't do them and things get out of hand later. Last thing I'd say is around road mapping and understanding that the community starts to drive your roadmap. And that's different for a lot of companies to say, well, hang on, we're not really the manufacturers of our own destiny. We have to let other people have a say. But the best thing is the people who are in your code base, filing GitHub issues or voting on things or just getting on your Slack channel or forum or whatever, they're most likely your users. It's the best kind of feedback loop. And CyberArk has been great in recognizing that. It's literally like if people are active in the community, it's the tightest feedback loop you can get with a customer. They're so committed, they're so embedded in it that ignoring them would be so silly. And CyberArk is just great. We're really talking directly to the customers, and anybody who's interacting with our open source.
That's awesome to hear. And you're absolutely right. I think that, of the three ways of DevOps, the rapid feedback or fast feedback loops are incredibly valuable. And to get that, especially from your customers that are, contributing code or asking for, issue tickets to be voted on, et cetera, is probably as you said, it's the fastest amount of feedback you could get is, hey, here's a dev branch that we're getting ready to release. It has got the following features and get some votes on maybe, the next sprint or the next kind of roadmap items as well is hugely valuable to give your customers that are active what they want. And especially if they're contributing code, I mean, it's, hey, right? Like it can be a very good thing. So that's awesome to hear. Let me also ask then, I've been seeing this thing out there lately called Conjur Secretless. And I don't know much about it, but I'm very intrigued. First of all, what is it? And more so, when can people get their hands on it and all that good stuff?
Awesome. Sure. Well, we'll give you the preview, but very soon we'll be making it more sort of widely announced. But it is in beta, so I can talk about it. Here's a thing I like to say to people who are building applications or deploying them in a DevOps environment. If you're worried about your secrets being leaked, and secrets, I mean, your database passwords, certificates, whatever. If you're worried about those being leaked, then you're doing the right thing, because most applications have vulnerabilities and can be hacked. And those keys, those passwords, those secrets are normally right in those applications. And you're only one SQL injection vulnerability away from having that database password pulled out and used to run, whatever kind of attack or lateral move or Bitcoin mining operation or whatever. But you can't leak what you don't have. And secretless is an architectural change that we're proposing with technology that implements it. But it's not just a piece of technology, it's a way of architecting your apps such that you don't end up with secrets ever in your application space at all. Now, how does that work? There's a sidecar model. There's a thing that sits beside your application, and the application traffic between your original microservice or app to that sidecar is trusted and it's managed. But the sidecar basically proxies on your behalf over to the real privileged resource, like a database or other server. And importantly, that sidecar takes care of retrieving the secret, rotating it, keeping it secure. It makes sure it doesn't log it. All the things that developers kind of forget to do or might not be aware of. Because when you're handling a secret, that's danger. It's the danger zone. You don't want to be handling secrets if you can't. So Secretless, and the website is secretless.io. If anyone wants to go there to try it out, we'd love some feedback on it. It completely removes and completely essentially guarantees that you can have as many OWASP vulnerabilities in your app as you want. Nobody can steal your secrets because there's no pathway for them to pull those secrets out. They're going to be stored separately, and that just removes a vast amount of attack surfaces. And we believe it's the way forward.
That's incredible. So, as we were talking about just before we started recording, it sounds like it's very similar to the whole zero trust or beyond core model, which is it's about application access versus privileges. Is that maybe or access and privileges, rather, I should say, versus more abstraction? Is that maybe a good kind of way to think about it?
That's dead on. So, a lot of vendors now recognize that secrets are not managed very well by developers, and developers are we're busy. That they're just not aware of the many ways that those things can be leaked, accidentally logged, etc. So everybody recognized the problem, but there are different solutions. Other vendors have proposed making more secrets, making them dynamic, making them time-bounded, making them rotate really fast. But you still are exposing the developer to those secrets, and you still have to deal with the problem that for a certain period of time, that secret, if it's stolen, can be used. We don't believe that's the right approach at all. We believe the application has an identity, And it's the responsibility of the plumbing, the infrastructure, to make connectivity happen, not the responsibility of the developer to understand how to handle secrets properly. Because frankly, I think we're moving beyond that point in technology now. We've used secrets as far as they can go. Now it's a problem. Now we need a different solution. Secrets are still necessary. We're not going to say databases don't have passwords anymore. That's not going to happen. But the fabric that connects things doesn't necessarily have to expose the secret to all the way down to the application developer and into their code. We think that's frankly silly. Just as Kubernetes has said, hey, stop writing systems to spin up things and keep these distributed systems running healthy. We'll do that for you. So that's a layer of stuff that we don't have to do. It's a hard problem that's solved. And just as Amazon built EC2 and said, hey, don't build your own data centers, that's kind of stupid. Just we'll do it for you now, and we'll call it the cloud. Great. And serverless. Hey, you know what? Even running virtual machines in the cloud is hard. If all you want to do is just write 100 lines of Python or whatever and just run it, why do you need to be exposed to containers or VMs or anything like that? We'll just call it a function as a service, put your code there, and we'll run it whenever it's invoked. All of these layers of abstractions they kind of democratize this technology. They make it available to people who are less specialized, and they put guardrails around these things so that you can't screw it up. We see the exact same thing happening with secrets. The proliferation of secrets is not a solution to secrets being improperly used. Let's stop pretending that that's a pathway forward, and instead say secrets are necessary, but we got to get them out of the place that they are being misused daily. I mean, it used to be that we could find like the daily hack or the daily breach, and we would say, hey, look at this company, 100 million records stolen. Now it's like, it's 3 or 4 times a day, and they're big names. So many of these are happening because of improper secret management by developers in their applications. And I feel bad for developers. It's not their fault. It's not that they're negligent in their job. They've got a lot to do. This is one thing they shouldn't have to do. So again, I'll say, you can't leak what you don't have. And I don't think developers, and we don't think developers should be dealing with this problem in 2018. And in 2019, we want to make it go away.
I love it, and I like the gusto with which you folks are approaching this, which is why don't we just eliminate the problem? Like, how about instead of just doing another layer of secrets on secrets, it's kind of like that show Pimp My Ride, except it's Pimp My Secrets with more secrets. It's just kind of do away with that option entirely and make it an abstraction layer that just works seamlessly. That's really incredible.
Well, what it enables then is the kind of next level of automation and experience. Now, instead of saying, oh, I'm an ops person, I got to deal with like 100,000 secrets. Now it's okay, an application just got created by this development team. And that application is declaring that it has this identity. So I can identify it as, the payments gateway microservice, whatever it is. Oh, it's also trying to get write access to this database. It's trying to push to this API, and it needs that key. All these things are basically privileged operations that if you take secrets away from being the sort of first-class citizen, and you start to up level and say it's actually application identity and application permission management, now you're dealing with what humans should be dealing with. Only a human should be making the subjective, or not subjective, but the decision that only a human mind can do about permission management. You're not going to automate that decision. That a security officer or an identity architect somewhere has to say that application has come up and it's requesting access to these things. Should I grant that access or not? That's a good thing for a human to focus on. The plumbing and the way that gets manifested, who cares? It should be done in a way that is, of course, secure. But right now, we're doing it as the focal point. We're focusing on the plumbing, and we want to focus on permissioning. Simple as that.
I love it. Now, tell me then, how does this fit into kind of the DevOps landscape that we face today, and maybe even some of the DevOps landscape that we're starting to see just appear on the horizon?
I've never seen a landscape of technology so wide. So, I'll date myself, but if I'm working in C++ libraries, then 20 years ago we were dealing with, there's Boost, there's Visual C++ on Windows, and there's GNU and all these other compilers, and it sounded like a long list, and it probably was for the time. But if I look at the list of stuff we deal with now for DevOps, it's just A, never ending, and B, growing every day. Configuration management systems, Puppet, Chef, etc. Orchestrators like OpenShift, Kubernetes, Mesos, etc. CI systems, you got Jenkins, you got all the Circle CI, you name it. And that's just the major players. Then you've got this like second tier of other things like connectivity tissue, things that you might use in your tooling to, as a Jenkins plugin, a Chef plugin, whatever it is. And those are of varying quality. Some of them are, approved by those vendors. Some of them are community contributed. Some of them are just random weekend projects that have absolutely no guarantee of quality at all. And then you've got the amount of languages we deal with, the amount of cloud providers. So this combinatorial explosion is non-trivial and hard to deal with. So as much as I want, certain things done a certain way, we also have to recognize that, for things like secretless and Conjur, they have to play in this very, very wide environment that's dynamic and always changing. And there's almost no standardization. I mean, we got Docker, great, containers, that helped a bit. And now it's like OpenShift. Okay, which version of OpenShift? 3.7, 3.9? Hopefully not 3.3 because it doesn't have these features that we need. Okay, oh no, 3.10 just appeared. And the feature landscape within just OpenShift or Kubernetes or whatever changes so rapidly that it is by far the most dynamic, the most changing landscape I've seen in my career. So I love working in it. It's a lot of fun because of that.
Are there any projects or tools or even architectures, right, that you enjoy playing with today? Like things that are maybe out there that you just dabble with in your free time, for example.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of serverless stuff. I love the fact that serverless is kicking into high gear and ease of adoption by people who are not necessarily software nerds. So we've seen people in scientific communities who, can get by in Ruby or Python or something and have enough expertise to write some code, do some data analytics. But all the layers below, are just, they don't need to know, they don't need to care. So I love playing with that and watching the initial, say last year, watching how people thought about serverless was really interesting because it was the be all and end all for a lot of things. And then over the last 12 months, it's like, maybe it's not everything. Maybe it's really good at these couple of things. So it kind of contracted. And then now it's starting to expand a little bit again as people say, okay, let's see if we can, go beyond and see what we can do next. So serverless is something in my spare time I spend a lot of time looking at.
That's awesome. Now, I would be remiss to ask, are you doing it more on Amazon or on Azure or both? Like, which one seems to be kind of the one that draws you to it?
So Amazon, because I sort of like their raw approach. It's kind of like a brutally honest approach, and it's like, hey, here's something. It's beta, but maybe it shouldn't have been beta. It's like we got it out there. Go play with it. I like being an early adopter of that. On the flip side, on the Azure side, I love the kind of polish that is on some of their stuff. And but I would say it's probably more Amazon than others right now. But yeah, and Google's not far behind on things. Like the GKE experience is great. But yes, Amazon is kind of like the toolbox, the raw, you can do whatever you want toolbox, and I like that. So can't suppress that nerd inside me. It's always there.
That's great. That's great. So I didn't prep you for this while we were getting ready to record, but are you ready for Application Security Weekly's 5 questions?
Oh, you bet.
All right. The first one I like to ask is, what were the specs like on your first computer?
It was a 286. And it did not have a math coprocessor. I remember that. I think it was like the 386 time frame that the DX or whatever came in. So numerical operations were kind of slow and sucky. It did have VGA. I don't think it had SVGA, but it had some color. So it was great. And it could not run Doom. It failed miserably at running Doom, and that made me so sad.
Well, could you at least install Doom? That's the most important step. So
Yeah, exactly.
awesome. So then, of course, with that, what was the first programming language that you learned, and what do you enjoy writing in today?
First one I learned was HyperTalk, which was this sort of scripting language that was behind Apple's HyperCard system. And I was lucky. I mentioned earlier that there were these multinationals bringing their offices to Ireland. My uncle worked for Apple, and he got great deals on Macs. So around about the time that I had that 286, he also got a Mac, those old sort of boxes with a little 9-inch black and white screen inside.
Yep.
That was the first computer I really loved. And on it was this system called HyperCard, which is kind of like PowerPoint on steroids. And it had this little language, and I had no manual for it. I had no idea how to deal with it at all. But it had some samples, and I was like, what the heck is this? It's a loop, an if statement? This is amazing. I didn't understand any of it, but I typed, and it worked. And I made tons of mistakes, and it was just a ton of fun. Nowadays I manage people, so I get to program in Slack messages. If I'm able to upload a custom emoji, that's about as much coding as I can do these days. But if I had the choice, I've probably done more in Python in the last few years than any other language. I'd say that's probably where I'd land.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull you into the holy war here at this point, which is VI, Vim, or Emacs.
Oh my God, I use Atom right now because I'm lazy. I would say, so the first 10 years of my career, I was an Emacs devotee. I had lots of things set up just the way I wanted it. Then, as I had to jump on more, it got more ops focused, and I had to jump on more and more raw systems. It was like VI, because it was like the only thing I could rely on being there. And then Vim became a little bit more possible. So I would say, okay, I'm hedging now. Of course, I'm not giving you an answer. I will say Vim. It's the one of the three I'd probably be most comfortable in right now.
Awesome. Hey, well, same here. So that's awesome. So the other question that I always ask, though, is this: spaces or tabs?
Oh, geez. Okay, so now 50% of the audience is just going to like table flip their way out of this, depending on whatever answer I choose. Say space, Bo. Or did I cut out? Did you get that? I don't know if I cut out there.
You cut out. You almost avoided the question.
What a perfect time for the internet to screw up. I was going to say tabs, but spaces inserted automatically based on what the reader's preferences are.
There you go. Hey, I do tabs as for spaces. Like that's just the way I roll. So I'm a heathen around.
This is where
so
I table flip it.
Right, exactly. Everybody table flips every time I ask that question. So the last question I have is, what sort of advice would you give to newcomers in the industry today?
And do you mean the security industry or application development in generic, the broader sense?
Yes.
Okay. Find a mentor. Find someone that has time, expertise, and the willingness to give you a leg up. If I hadn't had the mentors I had when I started in that Irish company long, long ago, I don't know where my career would have gone, but it certainly wouldn't have been as fun. There's nothing as beneficial as that. But crucially, find someone who is okay with you disputing what they're saying and adding another perspective. You don't want to just be a carbon copy of the mentor. Find someone who listens and believes that if you're new to the industry, even if you're, you had 20 years experience in another industry and you're not some college graduate, or at least a college age graduate, finding someone who respects your perspective and devotes time to growing you and nurturing your own unique perspective is the most important thing someone new to the industry can do.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, with that, folks, check out conjur.org/ASW or secretless.io for some of the cool new things that they're doing over there at Conjur. Brian Kelly, thank you so much for joining us on Application Security Weekly.
My pleasure. Thank you, Keith, for having me. It's been great.
Thank you. And with,